Hi, everybody. Welcome to Connecting with Jennifer Filzen. Today, I have a special guest. We have Dr. Cheryl Lentz, and I met her through the Clarissa Burt tribe. And I spoke with her yesterday, and I thought, oh my gosh, she has so much cool stuff going on in her life, and she is such a font of information. I thought it would be super fun to bring her on and get to know her on a personal level. So, Cheryl, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here. Remember, you never meet anyone by accident, so get introduced to a whole new tribe. Happy to be here.
Right on, right on. And so the first thing that we ask is what makes you special and unique? And you have so much that you can say, right? So tell us what makes you special and unique, Dr. Cheryl Lentz.
I think the funniest part of this is to work backwards from the irony of the situation. I've become wonderfully famous as a result of failure. And I find that completely ironic that I could be considered the queen of failure. This is what my TED Talk was on in October. My latest book was called Failure Has No Alibi. I was amazed because I have some of the most epic failures, bar anyone. And I have failed in every part of my life. It's one of those go big or go home. And with one exception, I've been able to correct and recover from all of them. And part of what I've learned is that failure is a gift and that life doesn't happen to us, it happens for us. And so, as a college professor, as a business owner of several businesses, I do a variety of things like you. I like to go dancing and do salsa and ballroom and things as well. But there's that core of trying to make the world a better place and to leave your legacy behind. And it's very ironic that my legacy happens to be one of failure, right? How to recover from it. Who knew, right? Who knew that failure and the F word was a thing, right?
How did you find out that failure was your secret to success, and how young were you, and how did it become your big flag that you wave and do TED Talks on?
You know, this is all in hindsight. I can't say that I was bright enough to figure this out, but my two biggest failures happened when I was in college. And I didn't recognize them. So I need to tell your readers, you know, when you're young and dumb and 20 and you think you're 10 foot tall and bulletproof, and then suddenly your world collapses, there's no alternative. And at the time, I didn't have a mentor to process. So a short story here is I was studying and had been playing since I was 5 years old. I was studying to be a Notre Dame organist, you know, a classical organist. I was at the top of my career. I was the only undergraduate in a graduate program. I entered the program the spring semester of my freshman year. And I was the only undergrad. They're all graduates, and I'm just, wow, stunned to be a Big Ten university too. I mean, this is the University of Illinois. This is the big time, right? And then suddenly at the end of my sophomore year, my world crashed. And my professor came into my practice room and without any type of warning just said I was not moving forward. And when you're a music major, you have to take what's known as a jury. And I was not being allowed to even take mine. And because you have to move from being an underclassman to an upperclassman. And I had no idea that I wasn't even going to be allowed to try. I was just, without warning, dismissed. Bye-bye, see ya, find a new line of work, is what he said as he walked out the door. And I remember sitting there going, what the heck just happened here? I don't understand. I've been playing, you know, since I was 5 years old. There wasn't a plan B. There was, and how could you do this? And you know, all of that stuff flew in there. And it was such an actual defining moment. And what happened in that moment changed my life for the rest of my life.
Wow.
And I behaved like a petulant teenager and put that music in a box and said to my, you know, if you're going to have one person's opinion, and he said I wasn't good enough, which is what I heard, and I heard I sucked, which is what we mostly do. I put my music in a box. I put the music on the back of the shelf, and I didn't play for 30 years.
For 30 years?
30 years.
Wow.
I just stepped away and said, if you think I suck, and it was so incredibly painful that I'd been playing since I was 5 years old. So what, 15, 16 years at that point, no warning, my life changed. And it was no help process. I think my parents were relieved. My dad never wanted me to be a music major. So there wasn't on that score. It was just we went on, but my life shifted. And here's the lesson why I think failure is resonating so much with COVID. When you have forced compliance, something in your world changed magically for me. And it was a gift. Now, first, I did not recognize this was such a gift at 20 years old. I really was not happy with my professor. But years later, and this is like only in hindsight, I would have liked, tried to go back to see him to thank him. And people are like, what do you mean thanking him? It's like, there's something to be said that I could play the music, but I wasn't Mozart. And he saved a path of being just another out-of-broke musician, right? But I didn't recognize that. Had someone simply told me I was good, but not good enough to be at the Olympics at the Notre Dame level, I mean, I could have still played, I could have kept music. Me, it was an all or nothing, close the door, I was gone. And years later, I kept looking at that and moved into a different direction I would have never done, much like COVID has done for us. And you and I talked about the wonderful opportunities COVID has prevented us or presented to us, and how exciting if we choose to see it that way. And so I would not have made this choice, but I think I've had an amazing career as a result of what that man did for me that day that I wouldn't have had otherwise. And so
Wow.
it's taken me many, many years to process this, but here's how the story ends in that regard. Last November of 2019, a baby grand piano, which is actually to my left, or my right, walked into my life. And it was very interesting because when I started for houses, every house I looked at had a baby grand piano in it, all 4 of them.
Wow.
Now, I find that curious, and I didn't ask for that, but they were all there. And so when I bought this house, there were 2 pianos, and there was a baby grand upstairs and an upright downstairs. Neither one of them stayed. And so did I not recognize the signs of the universe and what was to come? About, again, November of 2019, a baby grand, a family interviewed me to become the steward of their baby grand piano that had been in their family for 30 years. And it's not quite being an organist, but I couldn't quite put a pipe organ in my great room here. So I settled for the most amazing messenger that found me, Jennifer, is I was surprised that the irony is that the same messenger that took my heart away from me is the same one that brought it back. And music came back into my world. It was painful at first. It wasn't that you suddenly become a maestro. I mean, I had played 30 years. But it was something that was, wow. And now I play almost every day, and I'm still a hack. I mean, this is not something that I can bring some of that magic back all the time in there, but I play for my friends, I play for Christmas, but that music is back only because I was wise enough to see the messenger and the messages that the universe brought to me. And so your question, and a long way to answer it, is this is what my TED Talk was about. This is what I teach my students, is having them to help and process the gifts that the universe force us sometimes to change. And that to me was the magic of music, but from a failure that was 30 years in the making.
Wow. That reminds me that Lisa Nichols and Susie Carter both say that sometimes you received a gift wrapped in sandpaper. It
Yes.
isn't pleasant, but it is what it is, and it is a gift still. So that's really, really cool. What else makes you special and unique?
I like to teach, and I have been all over the world in teaching. I'm a professor 21 years now. I have moved 38 times. Yes, I was a former military wife. And when you get to embrace cultures all over the world, absolutely amazing. I've lived in Seattle, I've lived in Albuquerque, in Vegas, and Spokane, and I've lived in Tokyo, Japan, and all of these experiences as well businesses. And this is where it's easy when life goes right, isn't it? It's not so easy when life doesn't. And the more experiences the world keeps giving you of trying to figure out what to do when it doesn't, that is the gift I bring to my students, because they're like, how are you still standing with all the things that have happened to you? Trust me, I've had major failures with everything from school to major divorce twice, not once, but twice. I've surprised I ever finished college, quite candidly, and I sit before you as a PhD, and I'm back in school getting a second master's degree right now. And it's just amazing that how I was forced to deal, but I had to embrace it. And here's the lesson. There's no shortcuts. You have to look at that failure. You have to look at yourself, and you have to love yourself through it, going, yep, didn't do that so well. And now my biggest grace is to be able to learn grace and elegance under pressure when the failures happen. Because things don't, I mean, we know with COVID, and I do a lot of videos for my students, and that's what makes me unique, is I teach them as humans first. and I know that they're not doing well, and that sometimes I have to be priest, professor, rabbi, mom, dad, big sister, psychologist, all at the same time to help them get through this. And so those failures helped me in a position to lead my students. And when COVID hit, they spun me up to a whole lot more students with all the universities, and I do weekly videos for them. And they love the videos. And here's the ironic part. They like the videos most when I'm failing. My hole in the boat story with being in a kayak when I'm sitting there literally having water in my boat is their favorite. Like, how is it that when I screw up, you guys are thrilled? And one of my students said, Cheryl, it doesn't matter that you screwed up. You show us how to lead through a crisis because you always get to the other side and you do it with grace and elegance. And I darn near cried. But that's the secret, is it's not easy to model when you're vulnerable, when you're raw, when the tears are coming, when the water is bubbling up in your kayak and you're like, this is new. And you're trying to find a way forward. But by leading that, my students say, you give us options. You're not stuck like the rest of us. And if you get stuck, you don't stay stuck. I'm like, there's the secret. And that's what failure has taught me, is that we're always going to be failures. So look it in the eye, invite it to lunch, make it a friend, and just kind of go on. Because if you want to be successful, you're going to have to make friends with failure, because failure is just part of the learning process of getting to the other side. That's it.
Wow, that is so cool. Because it's interesting. I love your viewpoint because in some ways there's the law of attraction, and there's that movement of choose good thoughts because they are going to be the things that you attract, right? So if you're looking for negativity, guess what? You get more negativity. If you're looking for positivity, you get more positivity. So do you find that there's a kind of a conflict in seeking
Absolutely.
failure but yet craving success? Doesn't it bring you more failure versus more success?
I'm not sure that I seek failure, but I don't run away from it in order to process it. That's the secret. Is I'm not suggesting that if we're not trained in the art of firefighting, that you seek out to run into a burning building. But when failure happens, you don't run away from it. And I see this over and over, that people like failure. They don't like that.
Oh boy, looks like we're having some technical challenges. But boy, isn't it amazing what she's saying about failure, right? When we embrace it, when we don't run away from it, it is something that we can overcome. Okay, I see a little bit of movement. Cheryl, are you back? So we've talked about how embracing failure is not necessarily attracting more failure. It's just not running away from it when you're faced with it and finding a solution so you can move through the challenge and come out on the other side with a positive outcome. Yes? Excellent.
Absolutely. I teach a lot of Napoleon Hill, which you hinted at, as a man thinketh. If you think you're going to fail, you will. If you think you will succeed, you will. Either way, you're right. And so that's why I chose Napoleon Hill for the failure has no alibi, which is one of his quotes. It's just a matter of learning to process failure as a learning, because we never get perfect. We don't come out of the womb walking and talking. We have to learn this. But children have a better learning process than we adults do. Because when you have a child that's walking, what do? They fall down, they go boom, they giggle, they get up, they do it again, and they're having a whole wonderful time with this. And part of it is that they don't look at the skill as the goal. They look at the cookie mom's got, the toy that grandma's got. It's a means to an end to help them get there faster. So if we can embrace the whole idea going, all right, we didn't get it right today. All we can do is show up and do it better tomorrow, but have that giggle fest. That those 2 years old, they don't know that it's a bad thing. They just think it's a thing, and they get up and they giggle and they rinse, repeat. And if we could have that childlike quality, how exciting that would be to keep moving forward and to keep that, well, what is the gift here? How is this going to help me? And to look forward to it, as opposed to doing what I did, was put music in a box for 30 years and not walk, but run away and not play for 30 years. I miss that joy that is finally back in my life, but it was always my choice. And I chose to.
That is so cool. You remind me of something that we do when we teach dance. And I know that you're a dancer, and you know that I'm a dance teacher. And so, yeah, we attract a lot of older dancers, people who did not necessarily grow up with dancing because, you know, partner dancing was not part of their thing. A lot of the people that we attract when we teach West Coast Swing are baby boomers, and they were into free dancing, right? There's no structure. So then they come in and it's fascinating because especially since we're here on the Monterey Peninsula, we attract people who live in Carmel, Pebble Beach, Monterey. It's very affluent area, very successful people. These are captains of industry. These are people that have successfully built families and homes and businesses and have accomplished quite a bit. And especially the men, we ask them to come in a dance class and they feel like very awkward 5 to 10-year-old boys who are just learning how to ride a bike, or, you know, and it's an awkward thing. So I have to gather the ladies around and I say, listen, dancing is something that we've been told is okay to do since we were little girls. The guys, not so much. So we need to give them grace as they are learning a new skill. And we need to also give ourselves grace because when we are older, we demand, you know, that we pick things up faster, or that we're better at things and we don't have that steep learning curve. But I'm sorry, the learning curve is the same for everyone. We all start off as beginners, and it takes time and hours and devotion and practice before we can start really becoming that level. And even some of us, the truth is that even if we want to be the Mozart or we want to be the dance champion, some of us just don't have that natural talent, nor do we have the tenacity. We have other gifts, and that's okay, right? It's okay. So embrace it, make it fun,
Exactly.
make a game of it, right? Is that what I hear you saying? Make a game of it and laugh about it, because the more we do it, the more we have fun, and the more practice, then we improve. We can't help ourselves but improve. Yes?
Exactly. But it's also the less painful. This is what a child doesn't yet know. A child learns fear. An adult knows fear. And that's the part, if we can go back and just say, you know what, so we make a fool of ourselves. Are you having fun? Is it a good time? Do you get better? Is it a good, and my students are like, how do you do this? I'm going, you have to realize what the goal is. I understand some things are painful, but they're painful because we choose to make them painful. If we can just say, hey, thank you so much, this worked, this didn't, but I didn't have that mentor back then to process it. Now I've learned and I can teach my students, all right, get up, dust yourself off, rub yourself off, and then start all over again. And put that smile on your face and learn coping skills that we aren't often taught. We're taught pain. And when we don't like that pain and how it feels, we don't want to do more of it. And I'm telling them the only way to get through this is to get through it, not to avoid it. And unfortunately, a lot of us tend to avoid it because it is too painful. And that's just part of humans. So if we can just say, all right, I'm going to have the strength, I'm going to do this. And then suddenly I'm a doctor because I finally went through all that dissertation and it was not pleasant. Okay. I mean, there are pieces of it, but I kept going. And so part of, I think, life is perseverance and attitude. But you said something about the law of attraction. It's the muscle. And if you can keep building that muscle every single day. Do I get up Susie Sunshine? No, but I will crank the music up and I will get all dressed up and look the part so I can change. Because a lot of people think we have to smile first and then we feel. No, we can feel first and then we can smile and then we can do all of this stuff. And it's amazing, but it takes practice, and it's not a dance step, but it is an attitude step. And so you got to look for it.
I love it. I love it. So let's move on to the next question, because you're naturally going there anyway. Who do you serve in your life?
Oh, goodness. A variety of people. Doctoral scholars are part of why I started my company. Is when I started my publishing company, it was about, here's what we do is we graduate you and then we say, bye-bye, good luck with that, have fun storming the castle. And I'm going, this is where my graduates need me most of all. We tell them to publish, we tell them to do all these things, and then we don't teach them how. And so I started a company to be able to fill that gap. And now we're going to be doing volume 20 in the spring. And it's just for doctoral scholars to teach them how to publish and to kind of get them into yet another mentorship role. So that's part of that. I also serve people who want to publish business books, and a lot of folks who they've always been wanting to write that book, right, Jennifer? They've been talking about it for 10 years.
Yep.
And I'm now going, Exactly. I am all about action. So that's part of what I think I bring to the table is like, don't talk about it, be about it. They get all excited when I tell them it's like, I've published 50 times. Are all of them bestsellers? Nope. Are all of them great? Probably not the first ones. But I kept showing up and I'm a writer. I love to write when I have something to say. And they're like, how? I'm like, I kept putting one foot in front of the others and I found someone else and then I figured out a system and now I teach that to others because there's a lot of people have a lot of things to say, but they don't take that inner strength to be able to say, well, let's just find someone. So here's the secret. Find someone who's done what you've done successfully and have them teach you how. You're a dance teacher. That's why they come to you. You know how to do it, right? And you're going to teach them. That's all it is. And so it becomes a matter of, I think we make the mountains way bigger than we need to. And I like to be able to help them navigate how to write a book because I've more than 200 people. We've got a whole 3 different, matter of fact, this year I did my first children's book. And that to me was way out of my comfort zone. And I just thought, well, hey, I've done this publishing thing. How hard can it be? Oh, never say those words. Never say those words, right? It was one of the most humbling experience, the fewest words I've ever written, and yet the most difficult and the longest I've ever, because it's just a whole different process. But this is the whole point of failure. Once you know how, you build a system, rinse, repeat. I know how to do it now. I can teach others to do it. But I always do that first. And so this was a very interesting yet very humbling experience, but I was able to get it out in time for children or in Christmas because it's a Christmas children's book. And there you go. But I would rather go to my grave knowing that I failed on a lot of things, but I tried, than have regrets. And that's my biggest philosophy is I want no regrets. I want to take life by the fullest. I want to do everything I've ever imagined to do. I won't do it perfectly. I won't do it well. But I guarantee you, when we're sitting around the campfire at the end of our days and I'm going to have all these experiences, you're like, how did you do that? I'm like, I did it badly. I skinned my knee. I had surgery. I had this, but I did it. And I never want to have those regrets when the end comes, because even during COVID, I've done more during COVID than I probably would have done not COVID. And I know for some folks that's a little hard, but life gives you lemons. I'm good at making lemonade. Let's go.
You know, okay, your stories are just so great. Okay, when you were talking about how you're helping doctoral students publish, it just brought me back. It's 1995. I am working on my master's. I'm writing my thesis. It's pre-internet. Sorry, the internet is not available at this time. It is only in the libraries of the universities. So it is not something that we have easy access. And if we did have access at the house, it's painfully slow. So I am in Campbell, California, which is a San Jose suburb, and I am driving up every single weekend to Berkeley to go to their library and go find the diaries and original manuscripts of 3 educators who were in the Bay Area from the time of the gold rush to the end of the 1800s. So I'm tracking all these 3 ladies as they're going through their journey of being educators in the Bay Area in this 50-year time slot, and it is microfiche. Remember, you had to go and like get all the video, the microfiche film, taking pictures so you can print out. I mean, it was a
Your list of your quarters you had to have for the copiers.
Gosh.
I mean, like laundry day, except for going to the library. Oh, wait, I'll give you one more. I had to type mine. I didn't really have computers. So when you miss the last page or you miss page 2, you're retyping the whole darn thing. Not just
I
one
know.
page.
Okay. So I fortunately had a word processor. Thankfully, I had that. But I remembered going through the process, and hats off to my professor because I kept bringing her like my version, and then she'd edit it, and I'd go back and retype. And the real person who truly wrote that damn thesis was my professor, because she edited it, and I have it. I have it sitting here. And it's, oh my God, Cheryl, when I read it, it's horrible. It's awful. I mean, it's the stories are good, but my writing, and now years later, I'm a professional writer and I do marketing for all these businesses, right? But it's just like what you were saying. I had to keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. Now I can write, I have written a novel in 24 hours. I did it on a dare.
Exactly.
And I could do, because it was that I exercised that muscle. So how fortunate for your clients, for the doctoral and business and anybody who wants to write a book, how fortunate that they have the internet and that they can launch things with your assistance on Amazon and become a #1 bestseller. With effort, I'm not going to negate that there's no effort, but it doesn't take as many painful steps, and the process is so much faster for anybody wanting to publish a book in today's world. Yes?
Oh, absolutely. That's why sometimes I have to remind my students of the old days, right? And I'm thinking, oh, honey, the fact that you have the nerve to complain, I walked up the hill both ways, hot rocks in my hand, you've heard the bit. But it's really true that when we see our little world, it's a mountain. But when we put it in context and we look at the rear view mirror and go, oh, that was nothing. And you're like, every mountain gets higher. But so that's why I want to honor their frustration at the time, but keep them going, because too many people quit. And there's a great book that my mentor wrote called 3 Feet from Gold, and how close often many of us get, and yet we give up too soon. It's hard, but guess what? Life was meant to be hard. But if you can change the perspective and going, all right, it's a gift, it's cool, I've got this, and you just keep doing it and doing it. And now I have students. It took me almost 4.5 years to earn my doctorate. Some of my students have done it in less than 18 months. I would have liked to have been able to do it in 18 months, but I understand. I go back and cringe as well, going, oh no, that's not as good as a writer I am now, but that was as good as it was back then.
Right. And we evolve and we shift and dodge. Oh my gosh. You are amazing. Okay, let's ask the third question. What is your why? What gets you out of bed every day to do what you do? Have you clarified what your purpose in life is, or are you in a situation?
I know several of them.
Okay, cool. Share.
I don't think we get just one. And that is something that I envy those who, I'm always going to be a doctor since I was 5. I always knew I was going to be a fireman or police officer. I didn't have a clue. And trust me, to be a professor for more than 20 years with a lifestyle that I've led is miraculous. I've never lived anywhere more than 5 years, let alone to have a career. But what used to annoy me was about the fact going, I have an amazing career with. I was a concierge. I ran the Spokane Opera House. I was with the Shrine Circus. I was down at the Ritz-Carlton. I was in Seattle. I did national security clearances. I taught in the Japanese school system. And you look at all these things going, and now I'm starting to go, well, what's next? How do you reinvent yourself? Because once I get to a certain point and I get comfortable, I want to go out and experience more. I don't want to have just one thing. I see too many people going, my parents, for example, both have been in their careers and have been retired. They're in their 80s now, and they both did one thing for 40 years. And I look at them, and for me, it's like, oh no, I can't imagine doing one thing. I get to do lots of things. And I'm now trying to find out what that next step is, getting excited, going, gee, I wonder what that's going to be. Maybe I'll be a salsa instructor. Maybe I'll be in the salsa dance championships one day. Whatever it may be, I don't want to put those boundaries on there, because I hear a lot of people thinking, well, I've pigeonholed myself in this place and that's all I get to do because that's all I'm good at. It's like, nope. I decided to go back to school and get a second master's. It's in criminal justice. It says 180 degrees out. I have no idea what I'm doing with it. But it's so exciting, the fact going, well, here's what you could do with it. And so here's the secret of the why. You got to get out the magic wand. And I know that sounds silly, especially for the guys. But if I gave you a magic wand and you'll have people come to your studio going, oh, I've always wanted to dance. I've always wanted to do insert stuff. I wanted to be a beauty queen. I wanted to be a race car driver. I wanted to be a mod, whatever it may be. And I ask them going, and? I'm like, what do you mean, and? I'm 50, 60, whatever. It's like, and? And they look at me and they're like, really? And they get so excited, like they're opening, Christmas presents, going, you can be anything that you want. You don't have to always be the top. Like I learned is, I wasn't good enough to be the Olympian and to be at Notre Dame, but I was good enough to still play. So you have to be realistic. Not everybody's going to be an astronaut. Not everyone's going to be an Olympian. But if you want something and you want to know what it's like to, run the marathon, why not? You want to go take a ride on a rocket, have a ball. But I see too many people who have regrets, and the secret to life is at the end, when it comes, most people regret what they didn't do. And I don't want to have that regret. They're funny stories of all the things I didn't do well, and they're still great stories. But I made it, and I learned very quickly that I can't ski. Thank you. I mean, there's no way. My bones are not made of rubber and they break. So thank you very much. But there are things that I think that's the why. The why is to, and this is where my sorority comes in, is to live life to the fullest. I don't have children. I couldn't. And I wanted to make sure I could make my mark in the world. So the fact that people would know Cheryl was here. And I remember I've done this legacy exercise 3 times, once in my undergrad, once with my first master's, once with my doctorate. And it's an exercise as if your obituary came today, what would it say? And I remember really being upset in college. I didn't want to die in college because I hadn't done anything yet. The world didn't know I was here. And so every time I went in there, now I made a plan, and my life never happened according to the plan, by the way, just so you know. But it was still now if something happened to me tomorrow, the world knows I've been here. The world knows that I shape it every single day in the minds of my students and the actions of things that I do. And that to me is powerful. And the fact that there might not be a gravestone for me someday, but there's going to be oh yeah, that was the goals of the TED Talk, or that was the book, or she was my teacher. That to me is the why that gets me up in the world, because I make a difference and I do that every single day. And that's what gets me out of bed every day.
That is so powerful. Man, you're inspiring me. I'm thinking to myself, what have I not done yet? There's still a lot of stuff I haven't done.
Oh, I got a whole list. 2021 is a great way that I'm sitting down. It's like, all right, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. This is what I do. And I'll tell you, TED Talk was a 10-year dream in the making. I've been in 3 different states. I've tried many times. But when that dream came true, it was like, wow. When my doctorate came through, it was like, wow. So you got to have some big ones. As a matter of fact, I was on a podcast yesterday, and one of my coaches said something that got me inspired even more. Your goals should scare you. He goes, you have to look at these goals and know that it's just not something you can check off the list and do in 24 hours. This has got to be the most audacious, boldest thing, and he used a few expletives, to be able to say that you could ever do. And so I went back to my goal list and I changed them all, going, yeah, that doesn't scare me. That does. And I put okay, now that scares me. And so now I've got a list of things that are going to really push me, of things going, wow, take your own advice now that I keep raising the bar. And so that's what it is. So I went and crossed off what I did 3 days ago, and I put now I have these goals going, wow, that's bold, that's brass, that scares me a little bit. And let's have a podcast a year from now and see how close I get to those. So.
Wow. Okay, let's talk about your TED Talk a little bit. You mentioned that it took you 10 years in the making. You applied several times, and then finally it took. What was your process? How did you fail forward to get to the one that you did recently?
I kept doing it, and it was still on my list. And I'm one of these people that I'm not a procrastinator with a couple of things that are on my list that I keep wondering, and they keep bubbling up to the top. And when they stay there, it annoys me. You said that sandpaper thing. Oh yeah, that's the grit that gets under me going, and the problem with this one is, and so it sits there. And I'm not willing to say I'm giving it up, because that's not my style. And so I kept going and going. And I think this was just right message, wrong time. And now with COVID, right message, right time. And so the idea of failure really resonated.
So did you have the same, you had the same message each time, and it was just the timing of it, or did you change up your subjects multiple times in order to get this one?
You're very perceptive, because this was a very unusual. TED Talks have to be unique. You rewrite it so it's never a duplicate of anything.
Right.
And so in talking with the TED Talk presenters, they liked the concept. They'd never heard it before. They wanted it, but they wanted me to tweak it. And the tweaking out of my comfort zone was the anatomy of failure. They wanted me to take the MD track. I'm going, y'all know I'm not a medical doctor, right? I'm PhD kind, and I had to go do the research to look at where failure lives in the brain, and to do the anatomy and learn all of these receptors and learn all of these ideas with metacognition and where failure actually lives when you're dealing with neurons and the medical stuff of this. And it was way out of my comfort zone.
Wow.
And it was raw, and it was everything I was capable of. When you look at that and people saw, it's like, Doc C didn't do that TED Talk, Cheryl did. And it was raw and authentic and gritty and just emotional. And it was like, it was probably the most powerful thing I've ever done in my life. But it was a lot because they got me out of my comfort zone to tweak it because of what they wanted to have. And I was like, okay. And so if that's what they wanted, and it made for a divine appointment to be able to trigger something that I didn't know I was capable of. It was just powerful, magical, all of the above. It was fantastic.
Bravo. So now, just out of curiosity, there are various versions of TED Talks. There's TED Talks and there's TEDx Talks. There's different locations. And with COVID, they've had to take their stuff online, yes? So how did you,
Sort of.
which
Let me
particular
explain the
TED
difference.
Talk did you get to?
TEDx is where you have to start. When you do a TED Talk, that's invite only, and you can only come from the TEDx world. So that's the first tiers you have to get to TEDx. And so, and there are TEDx all over the world, and then you have to apply for them. And I went through a whole lot of hoops for all this, but what we did with COVID was very unique. I took one of the largest stages in the country. It was in New York, Farmingdale, New York, and I was fully prepared to head to New York. I got the dress and the tickets, and then COVID hit. Because I found out in June, we thought COVID would have gone back a little bit, but I found out June 2nd that this was going to happen. But here's how divine appointment works. There were 3 of us here in Chicago, and one of the 3 had access to an opera house and a theater sighting. So what we were able to do, or what she was able to do, is we 3 recreated the TED stage in New York here in Chicago. And so I took the TED stage, the red dot, the whole 1,000-foot, opera house in there, 5 cameras, mics, lights, the whole 9 yards. It was the most intimidating thing we've ever done, but it happened. And so what they did was they remoted us in live from Chicago to be on the New York stage because of COVID. Now, not all TED Talks did that. And we do miss a little bit because we missed the after party. Obviously, we weren't in New York. But we had the New York stage, and we did it here in Chicago, and it was the most magical availability. And we made those lemons into lemonade, and it was almost close, but it was as close as we could get. And I'm not sure if we wouldn't have told you that you wouldn't have known that the 3 of us weren't on that stage in New York because it was so close to the one.
What a genius embracing of failure and making it better. And you didn't have to fly, and you didn't have to worry about COVID testing nor exposure, and you got to see firsthand how the stage works and what is required to put on a TED Talk. Brilliant. Brilliant.
And the only thing that was missing is I tend to feed from the audience, and there was no audience. That was the only hard part. Is I had to create the audience here because I draw my energy from you and from others that I do for, even when I speak in the classroom. And so that was the hardest because there was only 2 people in the room with me as I did my speech. And I had to, dig down and imagine the crowd. And that's the piece that, should I do this again, is I want to be in that stadium because I've spoken in front of about 500. I think the most was 10,000 at graduation once. And it was really, but to have that level is just it takes you back. I was intimidated when we did our dress rehearsal going, wow, it's one difference to practice. It's another thing to be on this stage, audience or not. So that would be the next time, is I really want that audience someday. But this was as close as we could get. And it was just, like you said, you were kissing, right? Kissing the number one. We kissed that TED stage, and we did as awesome as we could. Because I know a lot of people did TED at home and they did the Zoom thing, but no, we went big. We went big, and it was awesome.
That is so freaking cool. I love it. Good for you, and good for everything lining up as it did.
Sometimes you just have to go with it and wait for it, and it's divine timing. Again, this message, I've been, scaring my bosses for 20 years with this message, but apparently now is when the message is finally getting, because that F word is okay because of where COVID is. So it really is divine timing. You got to wait for your shot.
Well, and also too, it just goes to show how ahead of your time you are. But then
I never thought about that.
Napoleon Hill's information and wisdom has been shared for generations. So once again, sometimes we have something that is timeless, but we're not always ready to internalize it. Yes, it's just all about timing and persistence, isn't it? And consistency.
Well, I have an ism: success is where preparedness and opportunity meet. I have been preparing for 20 years. And when I was ready, it was just all the stars lined up. And it was just so amazing going, I know when there's resistance, that there's a reason for it, and you have to understand divine timing. And it's purple sometimes. You want to have that amazing in the shop. You want that in the shop. Sometimes that amazing. I don't know about yours, but mine's in the shop. And so I look at that going, I have to trust. That's the hardest part, is knowing that what is in your best interest will happen, and you have to wait for it. And sometimes that means putting some things, even with my music, it was hard for me. It's like, really, did I have to lose music for 30 years? And the answer was, in order to learn the lessons I was asked to learn, that was the only way forward to do it, even though it was the most painful journey of my life. But now that I'm on the other side, oh, me and my baby grand piano are pretty tight.
That is so cool. Oh my gosh. Okay, so the final question is, what advice do you have for anyone who is watching and getting to know you?
Believe in yourself. That is the hardest thing that I've had to do, is when family, friends, the universe, everything you've ever wanted to believe in, and you believe it to your core, but it doesn't happen. And so you start to listen to those voices in your head. You start to listen to the people who said, oh, well, it wasn't meant to be, and the rest of it. It's like, really, are we sure that that's the message? Because if I would have done that, I would have given up my TED Talk more than 10 years ago, given up on music more than 30 years ago, given up on other things that are very dear to me, that just, some of us are called to do some things. And when you hear those messages and you answer the phone, you have to be willing to put yourself out there. And that's tough work. And you have to have an inner circle and an inner core. And I don't get it right all the time. I have friends who call me, and I have to recognize the signs where they have to pick me up and give me back some of my own advice to be able to say, hey, what do you tell others about failure? What do you tell others about timing and belief? You know, we're really good at giving advice. For me, sometimes I have to put things on index cards, and I have to remind myself when I get to a certain point, remember, when this happens, believe in yourself, work that muscle, smile. And here are some of the weird things that your tribe is going to find funny. And my tribe has learned, the longer the dress, the longer the day. And so I will actually get dressed up in a long gown. I will put my long gloves on. I will do my hair. I did it for Frank Sinatra's birthday a couple of weeks ago. I will do it again for New Year's Eve. I will be alone, but I will do it because I want to feel like my imagination. I want to be out at that, Times Square in a long gown, and I want to have the dress in the ballroom and all of the things that I want in my life that I don't have right now. I will, instead of whining about it, I will do it myself. And I've got a beautiful dress upstairs. It's a long gown. I've got the gloves. I've got the hair, and I will get all dressed up to come down and sit in front of my piano and spend New Year's Eve alone. And I will do that for all those who are going to suggest that you're going to whine about it. No, do something about it. No, it's not my ideal. I've been divorced 4 years. It's not what I want to have, but I make it happen. And so there are a few friends of mine that will ask, going, yeah, and how long's the dress today? And they know if it's a long dress, they better go running for the hills. You know what I'm saying? But I will still get dressed up. Like I am today. I'm going out to shovel snow, so I don't have the dress on, so I have jeans on. But I will have the designer dresses, and I've worn them when I've been on radio interviews, because I have a regular radio interview I've been doing 4 years now on Thursdays. And the radio announcer always has a quick peek. He goes, all right, what you going? I'm like, honey, I wore Calvin Klein for you today. He goes, but nobody can see you. I'm like, but you can see me, and I can see me. And sometimes we need to feel pretty, and you need to feel that confidence and feel that love. And if you're the only one that's doing it, then you go in that closet, girl, and you find the prettiest dress, and you do the prettiest makeup and the gloves, and your world will shift. But it starts with you. And that is the best advice I can offer someone, is to believe in yourself. Recognize the disappointment of where you want. It will propel you forward in 2021, but don't settle. Do not ever settle. If you want it, and I'm going to be the only one at my New Year's Eve party, then so be it. The champagne will be there. My long gown will be there. And someday I will have it exactly the way I want it. But until then, you do the best with what you got. So long dresses, girls, you've got them in the closet. Go pull them out for New Year's Eve.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Well, for me personally, I hate dresses. I never wear makeup, and I'm very comfortable in my own skin. I am dressed up. And so
but that's the point. Whatever it is you're dressed, because I know a lot of people would have, they're like, well, I'm in my jammies. And I'm going, do you feel business-like in your jammies? And they're like, no. I'm like, then go get out of your jammies and go make you feel like you were going to the office. The more that you put on those normal things, and it's like, And even with my students with oral defense, I'm like, you will put a suit on. I
But
will
I will
use her if
say,
you don't want to do the tie.
but I am dressed to go dancing. So that's my little happy place. And so yeah,
Oh,
I can get on camera right now and
baby,
start
let's
doing West
go.
Coast swing. Yeah, exactly. So you're right. You're right. It's like what is our level of preparation so we can feel internally, is my underwear matching my bra and am I feeling really cute even though no one can see it? Like, am I wearing my favorite
Exactly. And that's
shoes?
the
Am I
point is what
wearing
do
my
you
favorite
do?
jewelry? Is my hair
Yep.
looking good? Yeah, it's these, or am I feeling super strong today? Am I on point? Am I saying all the right words today? We all bring it, don't we? But it may
Well, and
resonate or
that's the
may look
point when we
different.
don't. And you wake up in that morning, you can create that because many people think that, well, I'm going to be sad today. It's like, no, change the sadness, change the muscle. If you have to, go put on. And I tell you, the higher the designers, the more I'm having a hard time and I'm pulling up the big guns. But that's the whole point is why settle even though you're home? I have Zooms all over the world. I'm not going to be leaving those dresses in the closet for 9 months. Are you kidding me? Come on, let's go out and have some fun. And I will salsa New Year's Eve, even if it's just in front of the TV with whatever's New Year's thing is that night. So you make it and you make lemonades. And a lot of us are either too afraid people will think we're silly. And that is part of it. And I've actually posted some of those things on Facebook and my date nights early on. And they're like, you really did that? I'm like, here's the proof, baby. And they're like, I wish I had your courage. I'm like, what do you do when no one's watching? And so if you need a pick me up, fine, put on that long dress, dance around the world in your underwear. I don't care as long as you're not, if that's what does it for you and it keeps your sanity and your happiness, isn't that what that's all about? So make your own happiness, make your own
Amen.
world.
I even saw an article just the other day where why not break out that fine china and have your breakfast toast on it? We're at home all the time. Why not use the beautiful, special things we've been treasuring for years? We're here. Now is the time. Enjoy it. Use it. And I looked at that. I was like, I have 6 sets of dishware. I have the super fancy that just pretty much just you look at and collects dust. And we have the stuff that we use all the time. And I looked at after reading that, I'm like, I have this beautiful vintage little plate set that's like perfect for tea. I should use that more frequently. Like you're right, it's these little things. Why not? Why not? And if it makes us feel like $1 million,
I learned that
chances
from
are
my
we will
grandmother.
attract $1 million, right? Yeah.
Well,
That
and my grandmother really disappointed me when she died, and she lived till she was 95. She had all of these things that were brand new in the box, and things that when we had to go through her estate, it's like, what were you saving these for? Why? And so I'm telling you, on Christmas, and my parents came over the day after and saw this. On Christmas Day, I had china out there. I had my stemware out there. The only thing I didn't bring out was the flatware, but I used it all, and I felt fancy. It was a fancy Christmas dinner. But what are you waiting for? So you can go back, buy the china cabinet, and go, oh, isn't that sweet? I'm like, no, I want to use it all. I don't want to have anything with brand new tags on it. I don't want to have anything that just sits there to look at. Nope, I use it all. And so, yes, go make yourself fancy. And you know what? I will promise you want to bring out your tea set? I will bring out mine, and we will have tea via Zoom. Tea and crumpets, the whole 9 yards. It's fabulous. Why not?
and in keeping with the theme of fail forward, so what if the plate breaks? You enjoyed using it. Yes?
Exactly.
Use it.
You've got
Use
11 more
it.
in the cabinet, right?
Right? Or 5 more or whatever. Yeah. We used to have 6 of everything. Now we have 5 of everything. But hey, it's life, right? Towels get worn,
Exactly. But I don't want it
sheets get
to,
holes in them
and I think
eventually.
the china cabinet's a metaphor. I don't want to look in the cabinet and go, oh, isn't that sweet? And a lot of us look at our lives going, oh, isn't that, I don't live in a museum. I live in an amazing house with all kinds of amazing things around it to have it now so that we can enjoy life, not wait till you're retired and then 6 months later you're no longer with us. Not this mama's girl. Mm-mm.
Oh my gosh, you're such an inspiration, Cheryl. Okay, tell us how we can get a hold of you, how we can find you. And yes, you are such a treasure. So please tell us how to get a hold of the fabulous Dr. Cheryl Lentz.
It's very simple. My website, drcheryllentz.com. My email, drcheryllentz@gmail.com. And if you really want to get fancy, go put in Dr. Cheryl Lentz into Google. You'll see all kinds of things in there, from my blog to Google to my TED Talk is coming. They're processing it as we speak. It should be out maybe the first week in January because they had to do all the fancy stuff for TED. But I have a YouTube channel that has hundreds of videos, all of the podcasts and things I've been on. I've got a little bit of a presence out on Google out there. So come find me and come play in my sandbox. That's the most amazing thing about working with people is joy. There's no reason to have to stay in sadness. Let's make this world a better way because we're here and we're loud and proud. Go big or go home.
Right on, right on. Well, truly, you are such a treasure. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for watching Connecting with Jennifer Filzen. And today we featured a spectacular person. I hope you fall in love with her as much as I just did. And please reach out to her if you ever want to get your book published, or we'll make sure that whenever she does get her TED Talk released and online, that we'll add that to the notes. But yes, please follow this wonderful human being and remember to fail forward. Okay, bye everybody. Thank you.
Happy New Year.